Hi there. It's 5 o'clock my time, Eastern European time, Central European time. It is now 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Welcome to a messing around on a Friday morning. It should be changed. Um, I am planning on rebooting the Friday schedule a little bit. Time, no, keeping it at the time, but the time of 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, but making a new headshot, new not headshot, but new thumbnail, and change the name. I think we'll be messing around on a Friday morning. Who knows? We don't know. We'll see what happens. Today, the thumbnail is something different. I'm surprised I made a mistake. For some reason, it didn't come out right today. Um, I'm having some problem uploading my computer. I don't understand Google. Google is like driving me absolutely crazy with their virus protection or their scanning or the checks. I recorded my class of yesterday, Thursday, my first section of an Introduction to Politics course. I recorded it but I recorded it by using the MP4 recorder that's image that's on the computer at school, and for some reason I forgot to bring my Samsung little flash drive, because any other flash drive you can't put video on for some reason. I don't know why. It's 10 gigabytes. Oh no, you can't do it. Well, too large, or not, can't handle it, or blah blah blah. So I was kind of like, really. So I sent it to myself by Google Mail. Now when I try, and it lets me do it because it'll put it in the drive file, and you send it as a drive file transfer. Well, the big problem with this is when you try to download it. Took 40 minutes, 40 something minutes to download it. And the computer freezes up. So something's going on with and it was clearly interaction with, I had to remove I used to use AVG virus protection, but I had to remove it because AVG and Windows Defender hate each other. You can't just not use Windows Defender. If you don't use Windows Defender, then all of a sudden there's a lot of problems in Windows. So Windows Defenders is like, okay, use it, but then if you use Windows Defenders, you can't use other virus protection program because it treats it like malware. So it's a big headache. This is like pulling ridiculous in that sense. I've been dealing with the computer and wanting to kill it. You ever had that feeling? You want to I want to kill the damn it. Why won't it just delete something? Okay, I've been having computer frustrations. That's the world. That's where we live in, right? So the first week of teaching of the new semester began. We'll have some rotating students. My Constitution course. The course on the ratification of the convention. I'm a little worried about it because I think there's going to be a problem with some students. But, who knows? It was, everything went well. I'm crossing fingers and hoping things will go well. On Tuesday, when I go back to school Tuesday, I have to print up, I make a to-do list. I have to print up questions for week 2. So my students have week 2 questions, and for my key methods, the methods course in politics. And then I have to basically just prepare I prepared everything already for my Constitution course. And then I have to prepare the thing. So when I get there, I'm going to record. I'm going to be smart and bring my damn disc this time. So I can record it. I'm recording the both courses. And I think I might put them for people who, I might make it available eventually after I do the semester. We'll see how I feel. Um, I'm a little ahead on my Aristotle's ethics thing. I kind of didn't do anything Wednesday. I was planning to do something Wednesday, but I had some issues. Again, computer issues again. This happened 2 days in a row trying to upload a damn file or trying to download a file. And I was stupid. I forgot to bring it when I went after class to go Thursday. I forgot my drive. So it's like, you know, so therefore that's kind of a pain in the ass thing. So therefore that's the reality of those things. My class in Norwich is finishing up. I'll be starting a new class in the first week of March. Not next week, but the week after that. So I will be doing a course on a small group, maybe two or three students, on history of diplomacy, which is always it's I don't know. Do I like history of diplomacy better than international law? They're different. One is the diplomacy. History of diplomacy tends to be the origins of the state. The origins of the origins of how the modern European state and how states interacted with each other and the interrelation of state bodies and the creation of the international system. And that's that. Same thing with the international law, of course. Both courses really deal with the funding of the international system. So I am kind of, but one focuses on the legal structures and legal institutions. The other one more focuses on like the concepts of, great powers and the rise of great powers, the different IR theories that shape powers, and the concept of balanced power theory of the 18th and 19th century versus the neoliberal questioning of great power theory. So that is kind of a thing that that will shape the diplomacy course I will be teaching for the school at Norwich University. For my writing, I'm going to be doing a lot of writing this semester. So I have a political anthropology paper on Aristotle's political anthropology, a paper on Aristotle's regime as political form for the Budapest Conference. I'm planning on making a submission for a paper to do something. I want to finish my constitution, the small changes of constitution. I think it's done. I should just look at it. I should spend a couple days. I just need to go look at it. I'll probably look at it at school this Thursday when I have time. Waiting at school, I'll take some time looking at it and think about maybe sending it to a constitution journal that I know, a Polish constitution journal that might like it. Maybe they won't like it, but we'll see. I just have to think about it. I just need to go look at it one more time because it's the four small changes that changed America. Four small acts of Congress and two acts of Congress and two court decisions, which all from the 1960s really fundamentally altered the character of the Americans. And these are small changes. These were small. It's minor things, not a constitutional amendment, not like this. Basically, like the 1964 Immigration Act. What is this? The Simpson-Mazola bill in 1988 about immigration reform, Simpson-Mazola, which was a betrayal. I mean, in the sense that the Democrats lied. They said they'd do something. Reagan gave some amnesty to some illegals, and then what happened was there was supposed to be some real reform, and the Democrats never delivered on it. And what happened was it set the road for the things. And then there's two court decisions. One is Baker versus Carr, which basically forced the redistribution of state legislatures from rural areas to force the fundamental change where basically the older system was county-based and political-based, and therefore what ended up happening was the rural areas had greater representation. And what the Baker versus Carr did was it said, no. It applied the 14th Amendment and did the concept of one man, one vote, and said, okay, therefore the urban areas have more population and therefore they should have more representation. And it forced all the states, all 50 states basically, had to redesign their legislative systems to redesign the state legislative districts so that for that the lower chambers, when they had, most states have two chambers. So therefore, even in fact, most states had not only their lower chambers, but also their upper chambers. So that all chambers in the state legislatures had to have one man, one vote, and that forced a real radical change of power from, there was a balance between, in other words, that the rural areas had slightly higher, more seats in legislature, slightly, not excessively, but enough. And what happened was that this balance kept the state. I mean, it gave the regional rural power a very great power. You can see this in where before the 1960s, you look at where state universities and where funding was spent in states. It was rural. It was rural and not out in the sticks, not in the big cities. The big cities got things, but they didn't get everything. But after 65, starting in the late 60s onwards, the big cities got everything at the expense of the rural areas. So the balance of power changed in that sense. That was therefore, this is kind of a fundamental change in the Constitution in that sense of the states, and that therefore changed the nature. Because remember, the states shape the national representation. So therefore, what ended up happening was the balance of the state legislatures changed, and therefore the new radically more democratically state legislature often redesigned congressional seats, U.S. congressional seats, along to support their parties. And this is the way the nature of the American electoral system and the way that we always allowed the states to kind of define the jurisdictions of the congressional districts. Particularly the state congressional districts. So therefore, so that's the paper and the other one is the decision by the court saying to I forget the name of the decision, but it's a decision where the federal court said, sorry, towns and communities, states, you can't deny public services to illegal immigrants. The argument was the illegal immigrants weren't paying taxes, therefore they shouldn't be consuming local services. Well, activist groups and some, used it, just take it to the court, and the liberal court. This is this was still. I think this was still the war. No, it wasn't. It was the Barber Court. Yeah, not the Warren. Warren's already finished. Not Baker. This is Warren, not Warren. Okay, I'm forgetting the judge. Then it was before the rise of not Runstad. Okay, I'm blanking on names, so please excuse me. It begins with R. The judge that was the conservative judge that Nixon appointed in the bench, and then he was an associate judge, and then became Chief Justice. And then what happened was when he died, they moved Roberts to be his replacement because Roberts was his clerk at one time. So it was in the reign of I want to say Baker, but it's not Baker. About the liberal judge that it was kind of less liberal than Warren, but still rather kind of liberal. He was alive during he was helping celebrate the 200th anniversary of the Constitution in 1987, 88. Okay, so that's that was 88, 89. And then the Bill of Rights in 89. So Therefore, there was and that decision basically said to the states, no, you can't. You have to pay, and that just basically overburdened the local areas and the places where illegal immigration hit hardest just were destroyed, and because they had to give the services, illegals flooded to these areas, and therefore that changed the character of the population. And this is why since 1960s, the population of the United States has basically added another 120, 130 million people. In other words, its character basically changed by at least over a third. In other words, it basically added another. Today's population, the addition is basically one third. So it was a significant alteration of the size of America and the demographics of the makeup of the various states in questions, particularly in the southern state, the southwestern and western states. Okay, and it kind of flooded upwards to places like Colorado and things like this, up to Chicago and to the big cities. Okay, because what happened was the illegal immigrants would go to the places where they had established social welfare systems, and they couldn't be said no to, and therefore this is the reality. So I have the paper I've been working on. I've had it for 3 years. I've worked on it many versions. I was hoping to get it published at Modern Age, but they just take too long. They had it for over a year and a half before. You want to get a decision. They said okay. They accepted it to kind of do it, but over a year to it's not even be told whether you got a decision or not. It was just very frustrating. So I pulled it out, and I was thinking about publishing it someplace. And a colleague said, "Why don't you just work on it a little bit, add a little more notes and things like this, and submit it to a Polish constitutional law journal, because it would be interesting in that sense." So I said, "Okay, I can do that." And that's that. That's the writing. So I've got the Small Things paper in Aristotle's book 4, chapter 5, book 5, chapter 4. And I also have the Force and Fraud thing that I'm working on. I just need to go build those up a little bit. So, okay, like this. I should edit my thing on the regime as a variable of political change for the maybe for a journal, maybe something big, because it's a large thing, and I have to look at the size of it. Maybe it's ready to get in the book. I should start thinking about getting the book done. And that's my writing. So I was wasted, to talk about my work, what I'm working on, writing on. I want to do something about. I don't want to commit myself, but there's a conference in Rouge, Poland, that I would like to go to this September. And I was also invited to a conference in May on Anglo-American constitutionalism that I would go, but I don't think I will have a paper for it. I would like to talk about I would like to talk about social trust, the connection between social trust and. There's two themes that I'm kind of interested on now: the question of social trust and the way social trust is necessary. That levels of social trust need to be a certain level. That without social trust, you cannot have working constitutional rights. In other words, you need to have the law has to have levels of trust. Without the high levels of trust, then the trust in the law disappears, and therefore, without trust in law, you can't have complex legal structures and complex business structures. So therefore, you have, in other words, that trust not only needs law, but then law needs trust in order to build larger structures. So there's this, intricate interaction between trust and law that I'm interested in. Now, I might write something about that. I don't know whether I'll do that for I think I'll do that for the conference in May. I might have to sit down and write about that. I don't. I just have to think about that for a while and meditate. And then the other thing I will do for September, I might do something on power, soft power. Uh, 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 what's his name? Was it? Where's Nye? Where's Nye? Where's the Nye book? They're driving me crazy. I know the Nye book. It's hiding here someplace. Joseph Nye's Soft Power. And my argument is Nye's concept of soft power is basically Weber's concept of charisma. And I'm going to work on that. I'm more and more convinced. I've had this thought for like about 3-4 years now. I think I'm right about this, that it's basically Nye just, I don't think Nye intentionally took Weber's conception of charisma and applied it as to states. But I think the logic of what soft power is and Nye's approach, that this is attractiveness and the likability. Now this is charisma. This is, so therefore, the degree is to what degree was this intentional to him, or was this simply just was Weberian conceptions of charisma, which is very important in social science and the history of social science and political science, particularly of the tradition that Nye coming into the education 1950s. He's in his 80s now, 80s. So he's that generation, baby boomer. So he went right after the war, and that was very much dominated by the like Dahl and the tradition, and they Dahl, Robert Dahl, and people like Gabriel Almond, and there's a whole skew of these scholars that, and particularly like Morgenthau, it wouldn't be so much. Morgenthau was kind of anti them. It was anti-behavioral. So this is, and even Huntington to some degree. I wonder to what degree Huntington would respect Weber. So this is the point where you would have to ask, to what degree does Nye kind of echo through Huntington and Morgenthau a concept through Weber's conception of charisma into the understanding of states. In other words, what was for Weber a aspect of personality, human activity, human thing, that now Nye attributes to state bodies and political bodies and nations. So this is a very, for me, it's an interesting concept, and I've been thinking about it for years in this sense. So I might talk about it just to kind of raise on it. So this is the other thing. The other thing is now what I've been doing, reading. I've been busy starting the semester, so I've been busy reading course material. I've ordered some books, and the books I ordered was, well, I'm doing the Plato Laws. On Saturdays, I'm in a reading group. We're doing Plato's Laws. We're up to book 6 now, the Plato's Laws. And I just ordered a book about why Plato wrote his laws. It was a very interesting book, brand new book. That's coming. It's actually, my wife may have to go to the post office to get it because it came yesterday, but we weren't here yesterday. I got home late. And the other book that did come was 2 books. In fact, it was Seneca's, 2 translations of Seneca's work that I've been. Why Seneca? Because of Machiavelli. Machiavelli's critique of liberality, which while studying Aristotle, I came to realize that no, Machiavelli is not criticizing Aristotle's account of liberality. Because if you read Nicomachean Ethics, Book 4, Chapter 1 of the Ethics on liberality, it would not fall into the criticism that Machiavelli gives liberality. Okay, so thus, and also when I read people who write about Machiavelli's prints and the criticism of liberality, like Skinner, Quentin Skinner constantly points this out, that the target is Cicero and Seneca. And I'm thinking, yes, that the more I read, I mean, I've long thought this. I thought there's been that Aristotle and Machiavelli are not as, yes, in a matter of tone, yes. There is a style and tonal difference between Machiavelli and this. And I think there are differences in terms of their view of justice, right? And their view of the importance of justice, where Machiavelli is a little more cynical than Aristotle. I can say it right. There's a little more cynicism in Machiavelli than Aristotle. And more of a kind of, we say, black pill, right? The black pill. And I joke about in Machiavelli. And that Machiavelli isn't really kind of an anti-Aristotle, some people would like to argue. A complete break with Aristotle. There is a break. There is a choice, but there's a choice that, the choice for the human will and emancipating the human, and conquering nature. But that's, as for in Machiavelli, that is as questionable as it is hinted as questionable in the politics, where the politics, it's implied, in Aristotle's politics, the conquering of nature is never explicitly said, but it's textually hinted at constantly. And it's kind of, and the silence about it is telling. There's an absence, but it's actually, you'd even see it in like book 5, the fact that they use the word to happen, the Greek word that he uses very frequently in book 5, at the exact moment where he talks about preserving tyranny. So to happen means to chance, the words that chance, or things that can happen, right? That chance must disappear. Isn't that really the conquest of fortune in that sense? So there is if you were paying attention to the language, you would see the disappearance of fortune. I mean, the disappearing of fortune, or the controlling of fortune, or by its elimination, that makes possible a reform of tyranny. Okay, so this is a very interesting theme in that sense of what's going on in, let's say, book 5, chapter 11 in Aristotle's Politics. That you can say is, something that Aristotle is silent about, conspicuously silent about, but hints at it through his language, his use of language, or the failure to continue a discussion of chance when he discusses preserving tyranny, the role of chance in this thing. He removes chance. He removes any chance from this. And he must prove that this is the object, is that this would not be, if chance was possible, then this would not be possible. So therefore, this isn't this the conquering of nature in that sense? And therefore, in Machiavelli, who explicitly says the things that Aristotle would keep quiet about, that's the big difference. Aristotle would acknowledge, but not talk that much about, or be silent about, but would acknowledge silently. Machiavelli explicitly shouts out loud. And this is the big difference between, let's say, Machiavelli and Aristotle. One of style and tone and approach, not of rationality. I think in many ways, unlike Hobbes, Machiavelli still accepts the broad conception of rationality that Aristotle has. Now, he might put more weight on what would say practical experiential things, but then even Aristotle does that too in politics. So I mean, that's a very important, reflection when we think about this. That to what degree does that like this is now this discussion about Machiavelli. One of the things I'm very interested in this in Aristotle's book 5, chapter 4, he talks about the use of force and fraud, which is right from the pages of Prince, you could say, right? It's something a very explicitly a theme in Machiavelli that's explicitly addressed in discourses, force and fraud, right? Well, it is there, it is talked about, but it's just introduced. Now, some people argue we should pay attention to rhetoric, Aristotle's rhetoric, where that is, it may be not force and fraud, but deception person, but that's another issue. That may be a study for future interest. So that's, back to finishing the thought there is that why am I interested in these things? That okay, back to the question of soft power. Why is soft power interesting? Well, because it's the same problem, this idea of how does power mean? This is a big thing. I've had this discussion with people. What does power mean? Power tends to be a vacuum. It tends to be a kind of problematic term. Modern political people, a lot of postmodern radicals following Nietzsche in late 19th century, they've become enamored with power. But what is power but the mere act of doing things, doing what you want, getting what you want, right? It's the ability to get what you want, right? It is doing things, being able to do and get what you want. This is kind of it arises out of the physics, right? It arises from a kind of physics, applying in fact, the word for power in Aristotle, Dumas, clearly applies a kind of physical conception of actualizing something, right? Bringing it to be. Now, this is the problem about power. What is power? Power now becomes, in the modern world, particularly the postmodern world, the kind of omnipotent thing that politics is about, right? Well, yeah, it's neither here nor there. So let's stop on that theme. I had no real thoughts to talk about today because, like I said, I've been spending time just getting the Seneca stuff because I'm really getting interested in trying to deal with the question of care. I need to, when my friend Trevor gets back from his going from Midwest conference, so late spring, we might start a paper on Augustine on care, because I think what I might want to do is to take do the thing that we did on the forms of rule and turn it into a little book. I've always wanted to write a book on the forms of rule, and I might work with Trevor to do this. And we do Augustine. We'll do Augustine on care. We'll do a thing on mastery and power, and the deception of power, and the modern, postmodern, the modern and postmodern fetishization of power to a great degree. That really shapes postmodern thinking and radical thinking. This idea of power that really we have to maybe understand it more limitedly and more restrainedly. Hence why I'm looking at soft power in that sense, right? This is why that nagging question of what soft power really means has been really bothering me, because it reflects the problem. I mean, in many ways, I really think Joe Nye does a great service in his book Power to Lead by basically making clear from the point of view of leadership what hard power is carrots and sticks. Hard power is all about carrots and sticks. In other words, rewards and inducements and rewards and punishments and threats, right? So therefore, that's the reality of hard power and hard power in this sense. So therefore, power is nothing more than the means that you do to get something. So that's that so that is the thought for the day. So I have no real organizing thought, except what and why I've been reading Seneca. I want to interest in Seneca is not only to respond to Machiavelli, because I'm planning on doing something on Machiavelli soon, a redoing of Machiavelli. People are basically telling me I need to go redo the Prince series, and I will redo the Prince series. I was hoping to do a class on the Prince, but that's not going to happen. I'm now trying to think of what to do about. But by reading the Prince, I'm looking at the question of beneficence, and this has been a big thing. And the question of care, not reading Aristotle's on liberality and things like that. Where again, this has been a big theme thinking about. What about liberality? What about isn't the problem of giving and care tied to each other? So Seneca is kind of going to be, and Seneca played a very big role in the history of thought. One that Machiavelli, we can argue to what degree does the Stoics really distort that the Christians' embracing of the Stoic thinkers lead to a distortion of things. In other words, it's not necessarily Christianity by itself that leads to the distortion of reality, political reality, and complication of it. It's that the Christians embraced Stoic thinking and privileged it to a great degree, and using Stoic thinking to then reshape Platonic thinking in a certain way. In other words, you reread the Stoic understanding of virtues and things back into the Plato and Aristotle. And this explains the scholastic, later scholastic tradition, or this tradition that leads up to the scholastics, and the way they redefine the common good. Right? They define it as this something really almost Platonic conception of the good that is, I think, that plagues the problem, and it becomes so problematic. Once you understood this in this idealized way, then it becomes almost unreal, a theory of the Machiavelli's criticism of this, right? It's for the next world, and you forget this world, and this world is left, leaving this world at time. Machiavelli's criticism of the way the Stoic ideals in Christianity, using the Stoic ideals to present an ideal political order that is unattainable, and then leads to the idea that it's otherworldly, and that this was not that such. Therefore, this world is you shouldn't worry about this world, right? And this is the problem of a tyranny for Machiavelli. And this is what leads him to a concern. So therefore, there is, to what degree is Machiavelli's criticism of Christianity really a criticism of the kind of Christian appropriation of the Stoic thinking, Stoic ideas? And that maybe it's not appropriation, but the use of, not the misappropriation or the appropriation or altering of them, but rather the ideas themselves. Because there's something apolitical about the Stoics. The Stoics, particularly Cicero and Diophanes. Diophanes is a great book, but it's almost acknowledging that the Republic is dead, and therefore political life is dead, and that he's more concerned about teaching his son ethics, not in terms of proper citizen, of who's a proper citizen, but private ethics, right? And that Diophanes becomes a book about not teaching citizens, but teaching his son to be a good human being, right? Not necessarily a good citizen, because the good citizen is no longer possible with the death of the Republic and the rise of the political order. That you have to switch the scope of the good away from the public and to the private. And this is something we can say that isn't this what Christianity does? Switch the scope away from the public, that's from the public to the personal, to the private, and that the switch from social behavior and social our community life and our community acting to the personal, the individual. And this is something that we have to think about for that as students of political theory and political thought, that the role of the dynamic change. this move to the private. And the move to the private, then when you radically take the private and then radically politicize it, which the postmoderns seem to do, then what happens is a more totalitarian. In other words, you take the individual and then you even see this in Hobbes. You see that Hobbes takes the man that he generates and then absolutizes it. So instead of having an aggregation of many men that is a natural habitat, that the men that is a plurality of things. In other words, the man is a social animal. The Hobbesian framework takes man, understands man in his nature, and then makes that a social entity and creates an aggregate of it, but from an individual point of reference. A man that is universal. Nature is universal. Now the postmodern does the opposite. It's no longer universal, it's particular. So that the Hobbesian man is no longer a particular man, but an absolute man. And I think that's, they can even say that Hobbes does the same thing, the absolutization of things, right? Not the particular. And whereas the critique, the postmodern critique of enlightenment, and let's say Hobbes and Hegel, is that they do move to the universal and ignore the political, and therefore it's the personal and the individual, the particular, must become the basis of the new universal, or not universalized, but everything must be particularized. But at the same time, they do universalize it. They make it a norm. They make this the new norm. So that's some of the crazy ideas I've been struggling with in that sense. I am hoping that everything's all right with all you guys. I'm talking about the stream. Talking about the stream. We'll finish Aristotle up. We're not even. We're starting recording book 5. The recordings are done from up to like the first introduction to book 5. Book 5 has basically 11 chapters, so I've basically got maybe not the first third. Yeah, the first third, almost the first third done, almost. We'll start. I'll probably doing some recordings this weekend. I have a lot of. I have to. My Norwich has. I have by the end of the month. By the end of the month, I need to watch a whole bunch of videos about privacy and security issues. Okay. Yeah, Corlett said he translated his translation of Drew Law Rochelle to Imperial Press, but they don't seem to be very interested at this moment. Well, I'm sorry about that. That's a shame. They might not be interested because I think they're in trouble. Well, Lulu, go look at Lulu. Lulu has Amazon access. I maybe the other places, but Amazon no longer has the service that Amazon used to have for themselves. I think that went belly up. They didn't want to do it anymore because they thought they just didn't want to run it anymore, and therefore they let other private entities they cooperate with. Lulu is pretty decent. I've had no problems with it. I need to do an edit and maybe make my book shorter and cheaper so that people will buy more of it. Well, the problem with Imperium is that they're in Australia. Okay, I think they're an Australian press, and it's cost. I think the problem here is they have shipping issues, and I think they have to. I'm not sure if they have a Amazon. I'm not sure Amazon is agreeing to be their off printer. I don't have the book. Where is the book? I have it here. Well, I think they had a problem with the UK distributor that printed their stuff. I think there's I heard rumors about that that So they have to get a deal with the printer and that, and maybe the printer has limits. That's another thing. That is, it's not a press, not a full trade press like Amazon. So that Amazon can it's a little more expensive. Doing it with a private press may be a little cheaper, but they may have limits to what they can produce in a sense. So that's why, that's why you're saying that's why you did the Moras translation that they bought and they haven't really released. Well, that's they might have to wait for the publisher to get things done and get some money, for the budget with their contractual agreement. That's the problem with press books. Doing it through Lulu stops that. They don't have to print a whole bunch of books. Lulu doesn't print any books; they print on demand. So it leads to it increases the cost of production by 15 to 20%, but it's more available, and it's not. In other words, those are there. So I don't want to bore people like this. I know that boring thing. Today is, like I said, it's been the start of the semester. I've really had a really weird week. I've been having really bad sinus headaches. It's spring, it's weather, the atmosphere. It's been like, hell on earth. You probably don't hear it. The fan is on to get some ventilation in here. I hope you don't hear the fan. You hear the fan? The buzzing. Zzz. So if you don't need to get air in here, otherwise the place would be like stale. The real thing I need to talk about for you guys is what I'm doing this session. I'm going to rebrand it. I said so in the beginning of the thing. We're going to maybe messing around with something. I have some ideas. I put them last week. I mentioned them. I even mentioned. I think I'm not sure I mentioned them on the 400. We're over 400. What is the today's count? Today's count is maybe we lost 404. So we're over the 400. We had a weird thing. We had 402 and then went to 401, and then now 404. So therefore, on Tuesday, I'm going to be on Lori Johnston from Kansas State University, who has a website, on political philosophy, a YouTube channel on political philosophy, which is rather large. She makes PowerPoints and does PowerPoint video presentations. I just don't have the skills or the patience to do such things. She's had a very good series recently on she had a very good series on Vogler that even though I think she kind of overemphasizes things. Yeah. I really think my only criticism of her Vogler series is I think that she's not being she doesn't see the she doesn't know the earlier Vogler. Okay, so therefore she doesn't see the role of the political religion book as much. That if you understood that the political religions book of the 1930s it is the kernel idea that leads to the Gnosticism. It leads to the new science of politics and the Gnosticism history book. But then that also then leads to a crisis. The symbolism argument, the representation problem, the problems of symbols, which then leads him to jettison the political history of ideas book that he was working on, which he had many volumes of already done. In fact, what happened was he had to scrap a lot of his in other words, he took a lot of the ancient stuff and then reformulated for Plato and Aristotle. Um, um, in other words, he took a lot of the idea stuff he already had and it was going to be doing, but then he published even after when he was having trouble he got the first 3 volumes, the first 3 volumes of his order and history thing, which again the order and history approach is resting on his new model of theories of symbols, the ideas of the symbols and the connection of symbols to this idea of the metaxy, this idea of the connection between the particular, this Platonic conception of that, and he had this language, a specific language that was tied to this, and you can always see Vogelin in terms of these 4 moments. You can see his beginning of political religions to the Gnosticism as a stage, as a preliminary stage to his symbolic, his theories of representation, which is in his New Science of Politics. He spells out the theory of representation, and then he works more clearly on the Gnosticism and his thing with the lectures. But then he turns to the problem of in doing the order in history is actualizing this new symbolism in politics, history and order, right? This, and then as he hits the Eumenic age, the 4th volume, this is where he has problems, and he's now already he's already back in Germany. He's having the frustrations of trying to get the German university, get the Max Weber chair at Munich, and he's been having problems about that. Vogelin is a very complicated creature because then there's another break. It's the Animesis. Animesis comes out in 1966. And this is a moment of crisis. Not only, this is where when I forget what year he did the Hitler and the Germans lecture at Munich, which was very shocking lecture that Vogelin had, which was very, and you have to remember the students Vogelin had in Munich were far more lefty than his students at LSU. Some of the LSU students, like I forget the name, but a famous one who died recently, Ellis Sandoz, followed him to go to Germany to study, get a PhD in Munich. But there was a couple other people. One of the famous ones who eventually got him to come to Stanford, who was part of Reagan's foreign policy team. I forget the guys. He didn't get the PhD. They denied him the PhD. It was the big, that he was working on the PhD in Germany. They didn't give it to him because Vogelin did not handle Vogelin was very bad about being Vogelin was not a good organizer, not a good manager in that sense, and really did not handle the review properly, and sent it to someone who really did not like the American student at all, and it ended up destroying the thesis. That was, I forget the guy. And then what happened was that bitter for that, he worked in American politics, part of Reagan's team, the Reagan thing, and then used his influence to bring Vogelin to, when Vogelin left Munich, when he retired, mandatory retirement, German system, university has mandatory retirement. When he hit the mandatory retirement age, there was a conspiracy to bring him to Stanford, and he got the money to get an American millionaire, I forget his name now. Same thing. He gave the money to Jaffa. Gave money also to Jaffa. Right? Henry Salvatore. Yeah, Henry Salvatore. They went to Salvatore to get an endowed chair set up an endowment and a chair for Vogelin at Hoover. They do it. He goes to Hoover and spends the rest of his life in Hoover. And it's at this time. Remember, it is back to his development of his thought. He has a crisis. With Animesis in 66, there is this crisis about the problem of experience, that he gets a whole new rethinking of experience. that then leads to the problem of finishing the ecumenic age. He then reissues at the same time. I think it's the same moment of time. Maybe helped by Santos in Louisiana at this time already. Published edits from the first book on the French Revolution, the Revolutionary period. The chapter, the sections about the early modern thought post, Rousseau and the Revolution, that he publishes as that volume, kind of in lieu of a fifth volume that everyone was expecting. And then when he finally comes up with, what is the fifth volume? I forget. Order and History. I'm trying to remember. I think it's very late, near the end of his life. I don't want to say things wrong, so hold on. Let's go. Order and History comes out. Yeah, it's Israel and Revelation, the first one. Then at the same time, The World of the Polis and Plato and Aristotle, right? Then comes in the Eumenic Age. When is the Eumenic Age released? I don't see the original date in the bibliography, because I know it's like, well, the Eumenic Age comes, and then years later, Volume 5, which is the conclusion of the Search for Order, which is it's a failed project. So his political ideas is something that he will start. The political ideas volume. It's the so-called 8-volume political ideas that he had a contract to deal with. He stopped it, never really published it. One of the volumes, the Rousseau and Revolution, one of the chapters was released in the it's 1966. Enemies says that's the big thing. Yeah, From Enlightenment to Revolution by Durham was 1975. Order and History was 1987, just before his death. But even then, it was dead. He was basically with the fourth volume, and it was kind of like he had a problem, and this led to the weird book. At the end of his life, he started dealing with the human drama, the drama of humanity. He became interested in paleontological thing. And this is something that Barry Cooper in his book recently, Barry Cooper wrote a book recently about this that highlights this last moment in Vogelin time concerned with the early origins of man found in the Paleolithic age. Okay, this idea of the symbolism and the idea of consciousness. So he was always concerned with consciousness. That's you can see this at the beginning. The concern of consciousness starts with his American book, his book on the Americans that was influenced by the pragmatists and things like this, the common sense tradition, American common sense tradition, right? The first book. But then he came back and he wanted to be a state law. He wanted to be a tradition of state law. So he's following on this. Then the race book, the 2 books on race, maybe 3 books on race, I think. Yeah, the 2 books on race. The first book he wrote, the Form of the American Mind. Okay, that was right. But the 2 books on race, 1933 and the use of race theory, again, both 1933. This is basically responding to the Nazis, right? And remember, he's in Austria. This is not this. And he would write just before the Austrian, in 1936, I think just before the Anschluss, he publishes The Authoritarian State, which is, again, this is a critique, a defense of the authoritarian state, not a critique of it in that sense. His 2 previous books, a direct attack on race theory, the role of race and state, and the role of race in the history of ideas. Right. This is the idea of race idea from Ray to Karras. Right. A criticism, this kind of genealogy of the idea of race, and showing how problematic it is. This is a direct attack on Nazis. In fact, this is why Hannah Arendt will quote much of Vogelin in her Origins of Totalitarianism. People like they looked to Arendt looked favorably to Vogelin, even while others did not. Okay, but this is the problem with Vogelin: is Vogelin has this weird evolution. It's like, okay, he never. There was a very good New York Review book talking about the collective publications of Vogelin, and made a funny comparison to a character from Eliot, the English woman writer. The story, the author is kind of a kind of a neoliberal writer who criticizes Vogelin's, or respects Vogelin, but also mocks him a little bit. Compares him to a character in Middlemarch. I forget what novel that it was. Author of a professor who had wrote many volume books but never finished anything. Always, he's great. In other words, great, and started to create a big, great project, and then continually stopped and failed to do it, and do another big, giant project, and failed to do it. Right, and the reviewer was kind of criticizing Vogelin for this kind of thing. Well, I'm going to be on Laurie Johnson's podcast on next Tuesday. I don't know. It's going to probably be at 7 p.m. my time, so I don't know what's going to happen. So I want to talk. She said she'd interview me, and we'll talk about it. We'll probably talk about Aristotle and my work. And she'll ask some questions about things, and we'll talk. And it'd be good to go to her audience because she's a much bigger. She has like 20,000 viewers, and maybe some of those viewers will come look at me. It helps. Maybe grow the channel some. My style is different. She does video presentations. I don't do video presentations. Well, that's it. So what else I'm going to be doing? I'm going to be doing my videos. I'll continue that. I'll be studying I have to watch a whole bunch of these and do tests for my American school about cybersecurity. It's the same every year or so, 2 years, you have to watch the same series of videos and take the same series of tests. Like, you're going to forget this, really? It's kind of frustrating, and I'm just kind of delaying it. But that's life. You have to do all these silly things. What else? There's nothing else. So that's it. If you like the videos, like it. Please hit the like button. It helps. Oh, you didn't like it? Oh, I thought you're rambling today. You're really rambling today. Well, I didn't have any. Some people always say, why don't you do something on something? Like they say, why don't you do something on some author? Like I remember a managerial revolution. And every time I plan doing something about the managerial revolution, I kind of walk away from it. Why? Because I don't want to. It's very difficult to organize and read it. Okay, I couldn't do a reading of it. It just and I think there's online someone who's read it already, and that's like doing it over again. I mean, people even joke to me saying, well, why did your dictatorship just was too long? There's already a dictatorship, a 2-hour, 3-hour thing of dictatorship by a computer reader that's clearer and sounder. Just okay, whatever. I probably will do something on this. If I get people asking me to do certain things, I will do things. We'll see what happens. I'm waiting for some insight from reading, and we'll see how my class goes. I'm going to record. I'm recording my classes, kind of self-protection, but recording things, and that's life in that sense. So again, if you liked it, hit the like button. If you didn't like it, of course, say why, and when you get the comments. If you want to follow me on social media, the social media links are below. If you want to find out more about me as an academic social media, you can get the links below that. And if you want to, help me to do what I do, you can become do so through Subscribestar or Patreon, or you can do so through buying one of my books down below. Another way you can help me is to just I'm not large enough of a thing. That's why I'm going on Laurie Johnson's, hoping that some of her thousands of viewers will maybe think about coming visiting me. Watch what I do. I'm not, the algorithm doesn't like me. I've grown, but I'm not growing at any real significant. I'm organically growing, but something happens. So Laurie, who I know, we went to school together. She was a little ahead of me at Northern Illinois, and she got lucky with getting a good job at Kansas State, and is now near. I think she's going to be Erasmus. Yeah, she's going to be in a few years looking at retirement, like a lot of people are, our generation. And what do you call it? Not Erasmus, emeritus. I'm not sure if she's taking emeritus or not. She's not that much older than me. I don't know. I think we're about the same. I may be a little older than her. Depends. Even though she was there before, I was at Dallas before going. I was Dallas and a year and 2 years after Dallas before going to Northern Illinois, working in Wall Street for American Express's financial services division. Then I went to Northern Illinois. So she was just finishing. She was teaching for a year at a school in Virginia, Rockland or Rock something, and then she got the job, the tenure track job at Kansas State, and got tenure. Her book on Thucydides, and she was thinking about doing a new book for Kansas on Freud, but I'm not sure if she ever did that. And then she did for Rutledge. She did a book on Hobbes' Leviathan, and then she did a very good book on two books. One, Hobbes on Honor, and then Locke on Rousseau on honor. So I don't know. I don't think she's written a new book since. So it's going to be fun to be at her podcast. Because if I can grow bigger, I can get a tip jar, and that would help. Okie dokie. Well, that's it. Take care. Have a good day. Have a good Friday. Have a good weekend. And I hope to see you again in the videos. Right now, the release of my other video is releasing, so I shouldn't that be long. Take care. Bye-bye. Have a good day. Have a good weekend.